To begin with, let me thank once again the great organization, Daniel, Joan, yourself, Nectaria, of course, for having organized a landmark event once again. So great job. I'm speaking after two ministers and the managing director of the ESM, so they made great remarks, and I'll try to just follow along on them and not repeat them. I will focus on the preconditions for financing sustainable growth and the role of banks. The managing director said that there was underinvestment in Europe and certainly in Greece. I will try to estimate the size, the quantum of the investment that we in Greece will need for sustainable growth. And here I'd like to make a distinction between what we used to say sustainable growth 2 years ago, which was Greece should have 3% growth for the short term and 2% growth in the medium term given the aging of the population, and what is the new definition of sustainable growth. Something much more difficult. It has to be growth which is environmentally friendly, socially just. It cannot compromise competitiveness, fiscal sustainability, or social cohesion. So clearly, it is something far more challenging, but it also gives great opportunities for Greece, and certainly, I think, for all the enterprises, including the banks of Greece. And now let me be a bit more specific. We estimate that investment as a percentage of GDP needs to rise from 14% to 18 or 20%, 20% being for the new definition of social sustainable growth. In numbers, that's 27 billion needs to rise to 35 to 40 billion per year. That's a very large number. We estimate about 1/2 will be own funds of enterprises. About more than 1/4 will come from banks. So you can do the math, that's about over 10 billion per year from banks. And I included in that number the RRF co-financing. And the other 1/4 will be from foreign direct investment and from public investment. Now, it's not a given that this investment will occur. We need certain necessary conditions to be met, and I think Greece meets these conditions. And let me enumerate them. Number one, the economy needs to be competitive, to remain competitive. The minister said already, we have highest level of exports in our history. And what is not known is that goods exports exceed service exports. Everyone thinks of Greece as shipping and tourism. No, good exports are higher. Corporate profits are at record levels. Foreign direct investment, also mentioned by the minister, record highs, 7.5 billion just in 2022. And something else, total factor productivity, the way the economy takes labor and capital and produces output is increasing. That means we're more efficient. It's increased by 6% over the past 2 years, when in the past it's always been going down. The economy has a skilled workforce, including tech focus. And we have a large diaspora also with high skills, which seems ready to come back. We have political stability, and the comparison to most other advanced economies is, must I say, remarkable. And I don't talk about a party, I'm talking about political consensus towards the middle. Common sense is what the minister said, and I agree. Structural reform, a government with a structural reform agenda. They're not resting on their laurels. There are a series of important reforms on the table. Judicial reform, tax evasion, etc. There's fiscal space, also mentioned. Primary surplus of 2% is in the budget. I think is going to be exceeded as it was this year. Debt service requirements for the public debt are low. Many thanks to European partners in the ESM until 2032. Just as important as the debt level is the low debt service. The RRF funds, already mentioned, 36 billion. Favorable climate conditions for renewable wind and sun. Already 41% of electricity is produced by renewables, and 20% of total energy comes from renewables. We have a geographical location which permits us to be a hub, either for transition energy like LNG or for pipelines from the Middle East. We have a well-developed energy transition plan which places a large emphasis on key constraints: the electricity grid, energy efficiency in housing, and the electrification of transportation. And finally, another important condition, no surprise, is you need a well-functioning banking system. And the banking system has undertaken a remarkable transformation. NPEs are no longer an issue, 5% and soon below. And there was no increase in NPEs despite the higher interest rates and despite the higher cost of living which occurred in the past year, which is a very good sign of the health of the economy. Very high levels of liquidity, loan to deposits 60%, strong, sustainable capital creating profitability, which is necessary for banks, an under-levered economy, disintermediated during the long crisis, with loans to GDP at 60%. But we are still a bank-centered economy where most firms do not have access to markets. We have experienced bankers who know how to underwrite complex projects and guide capital to the highest and the best investments. With a nudge from the ECB, we have climate and environment criteria in our underwriting processes and are announcing financial emissions reductions targets for all our clients. So there are a lot of opportunities for banks to make money in this transition. It is not just a need, it is also an opportunity, as I said earlier. So the stars are aligned after many hard years for Greece to move rapidly on sustainable growth. That's the great news. If I want to end with a bit of caution, I think is that the rest of the world doesn't have these conditions in place, and you cannot achieve sustainable growth worldwide by yourself.